Hi, this is the Social Jello with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Jello with Angelo show.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of Social Jello with Angelo podcast. Today I'm here with Vincent Buisson.
Buisson.
I knew I was going to mess up your name, man.
Yeah.
He's representing Judo France and Japan. We'll get to the details on that in a minute. And also with Barron Shepard. I've said Barron Shepard's name enough that I believe I've said it correctly today.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, and Barron is representing Judo in the U.S. on this episode today. Now, you saw the title. What's going on with Judo in Japan, France, and the U.S.? As usual, when these things come up, I'm just a podcast host, an MMA coach, and a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach as well, and a Kajikemo instructor. So I really don't have much to say about this kind of stuff. And when I see these arguments online, I bring in experts, or at least the experts I know, or people at least involved in it, and not just yapping on the internet. So today, I'm bringing in Vincent, who is he's also a coach out here. I'll let him introduce himself in a sec. And Vincent is doing, I say out here. So if you didn't know, this podcast is broadcasted from Japan. You just saw in the intro. So Vincent is actually coaching out here Judo in Japan, but he originally started in France. So he came to Japan and he did Judo in France out there too. Barron is coaching out in the U.S. and got his black belt in the U.S. So Vincent and Barron, Vincent, they both have a lot of questions they want to ask each other about what's going on in their respective countries and backgrounds with Judo. So I invite you all to check out this conversation. So let's start real quick with some introductions. Let's start with Vincent. How was your Judo journey in France? We'll start with France, and then we'll move on with what's happening in Japan. But what's going on right now with yourself and France in general in Judo?
Yeah, I started Judo when I was 5 years old. So it's been, 30 years now I'm doing Judo and only Judo. And I started when I was 5 years old, and I started competing very early. So I had many competitions. And when I was 14, 15, I went to a Judo center. So for 5 years until I went to university. So my life was only Judo morning, evening, every day. And I did many times a French national tournament. Never got any medal. Never. But the level was very, very high. But then they changed the rules. They stopped the leg grab. I think you did a podcast about it.
Yeah.
They forbid the leg grabs. Then it got very complicated for me, but I got used to it. And in 2013, I came to Japan. And when I started Judo in Japan, like, it's an all different sports. I felt I was doing something different. Like, this is not the Judo I've learned in France. It's the way we train, the competition, everything's so different that I felt I started from zero again, but that was very interesting. The French Judo level went down for a while, and I think it's getting back to the top. Yeah, it's changed a lot through my journey. I saw Judo changing a lot. So I felt I've done Judo all my life, but I've done different Judo all my life because Judo became different. I maybe 3 phases of Judo, like with the old rules, the new rules, and in Japan. So I've done 3 sports in one.
So what would you say for someone who doesn't do Judo at all? Maybe a lot of my guys are coming from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. What would you say was the biggest difference between Judo in France and Judo in Japan?
I would say the way they practice it is the main difference. And the pace is very low and the distance is very different too. In France, we are very close to each other, even head to head. Sometimes it's almost like wrestling. Japanese are very, very far. They stand straight. Sometimes you come here. Stay very straight. And the pace is very, France judo is very intense. Like from the first second to the very last, it's very aggressive. But Japanese are very calm and they take more time to prepare for the attack. So sometimes when you fight strong girls, you almost feel like they are weak. Like, oh, he's not strong. Ah, like it's okay, it's okay. And all in a sudden, he will increase the speed to attack. But yeah, French training are more intense, shorter but very, very intense. Japan training are more, it's longer, not very intense, but uh, yeah, it's so different. Really.
All
But the
right.
main difference, the way they practice it is very different.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
Their
now,
entries are their entries are more ballistic when they go, they go.
yeah.
so
It's,
now moving on to Barron. Barron, how did you end up getting into judo? And you didn't train in Japan, so your question is going to be a little bit different. So, but how do you end up getting into judo? And how was that? What was that journey like? And from your observations, what were some of the things that you feel are different from Japanese judo and American judo?
I think my first serious introduction was in the military, and then after I got out, I started going to a judo school. I basically trained for 7 years. Then I got my black belt. Then I was a Shodan for 12 years before I got my Nidan. And then I was a Nidan for 8 years before I got my Sandan. I was a Sandan for 4 years, so on. And from my perspective, when I first got involved with judo, that was when they allowed leg techniques. You could shoot, single and double leg takedowns and stuff like that. And then, of course, that changed. And I was quite fond of the leg takedowns back in the day. And the only other throw that at that point that I was even interested in was the one-handed throw that Koga had made so famous, like I believe starting in the '89 World Championship. And so when they finally made the leg techniques illegal, I just kind of stuck with that one-handed kind of judo style. And over the years, I've got a very one-handed and very ballistic style. So it's kind of, you want to describe when I was training, it was like he was saying, it was really kind of slow and methodical. I refer to it as a waltz. If you weren't, you were
yeah.
just kind of waltzing around, but we entered really quickly. And then what I basically progressed to was, I would close that gap really, really fast. And so I got a little bit of faster pace method about me. So just kind of just come along over the years. And I mean, I'm 60 years old now and I'm kind of still doing judo that way for some odd reason, but that's basically my experience in a nutshell.
All right. So now, since I'm not a judo expert, Vincent, what's a question that you have about judo in the U.S. that you've always wanted to ask a judo practitioner in America? And it can be Barron is not a snowflake. He will not be offended. So you can ask him whatever you want. What's a question you've always wondered?
Like, I went to America only once in my life. And I went to Chicago and Detroit and Michigan. And I did judo in a few dojos there. And what I was surprised about is how strong they can be in wrestling, in many fight sports. And when I judo in America, I felt that the level of the coaches were very low.
Yes.
Like the lack of knowledge about judo from the coaches was very, very low. So I was surprised. So the question is how do you become a coach in America? Because in France, it's a very tough course. It's 1 year. You have to study a lot of theory. You have to write tests and
and
you
you're
have to make
probably,
demonstrations.
you're really hitting on an issue kind of for years. unless you are actively kind of pursuing that and exposing yourself to it, you weren't getting it. And unfortunately, a lot of judo people here in the States, I mean, they're kind of what I would say recreational players, not really competing, and I can go into a whole other conversation there.
You should.
You've got like now through U.S.A. Judo, our national governing body, we have like a coaching education thing, and I think to this day it's still kind of an issue because there just needs to be more coaching education, especially at the higher level of judo. And I don't think it's not something that the organization doesn't recognize. I mean, they recognize it, but there's obviously some type of issue going on as why we can't present more information out there and make it more available, to people like myself who went through the organizations and got coaching certifications and and stuff like that. But it needs to be a continuing education process because the game evolves. Judo evolves. I mean, there's rule changes every year and stuff. So you really got to be up on that stuff. And then of course, and let's talk, an Uchimata today isn't like an Uchimata was 30 years ago. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so you've got step pivot entries, you got split hip entries, you got back step entries. I mean, so it's just stuff like that. And there's a lot of, and even to this day, it's like because I've done clinics and seminars and stuff, I'll show a split step entry or a back step entry, and I'll have coaches looking at me like, and just not, and they're obviously not aware of. And
that's how I felt.
I don't, they're enthusiastic about judo, but they're just not real. Maybe they just don't have that knowledge there. They're kind of trying to.
What I felt is it was more a black belt showing a move than a real judo instructor teaching a move.
Mm-hmm.
I feel he was just most of them, I felt they were more like black belts.
Yes.
Who knew some moves and they were showing it, but like, I feel they still had to learn this move more before teaching it.
Yeah. Well, I think I think a lot of times, and this is just some things that I see, we have a lot of people that are teaching like this kata style judo, okay, and they don't realize this is really not how you fight when you fight with judo. I mean, a kata is supposed to look pretty, and you got a very compliant uke.
Yeah.
So when you're on the mat in competition, the guy standing across from him, he is not compliant. He doesn't want to be thrown. So there's a whole different thing going on there. So.
Very different. And small details. There are so many details.
And that's what makes the difference of just those little bitty details. A change in tempo, a change in the footwork, makes all the difference in the world.
So then,
because they were showing. Sorry, say.
And then in return, actually, go ahead and finish your thought there, Vincent. Sorry.
No, I was saying they were showing. That's Uchimata, but when you do Uchimata, you have so many small things to show that can make a white belt being able to do it. It's not just. That's how you throw Uchimata, and that was over.
I have a teenage student now, white belt. Okay, he hits the most beautiful Uchimata like a Japanese, and so there's an old saying: the devil is in the details, and that's God truth.
Japanese are about details a lot.
Yes,
Actually. It's a bit different topic, but a few weeks ago, I've trained with a Japanese instructor, a very old man, and he made me practice the ukemi for 1 hour and a half, like if I was a black belt.
Yeah.
And he kept telling me, it's not good, it's not good, it's not good, it's not good. And that's how it's supposed to be, like small
Yeah.
details. Like,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
crazy.
What's up? Real quick, this episode is brought to you by thepit.tv. If you want to train with a UFC coach, why not train with the best? Chuck Liddell's coach has an online program where you can work through his entire system, learn all his secrets about how to train and how, at the end of it, how to teach people to get into the UFC, to do MMA properly. Hit up thepit.tv for more information.
Yeah.
So Vincent, you were saying off camera, when you came from France to Japan and you took the test, what happened? Because there were that was an interesting conversation. And then Barron started jumping in. I kind of want to go back to that to let the viewers find out what happened. So what happened, Vincent? What was it when you? So obviously you talked about your experience in France. You competed. You get to Japan. And you were already at that point a third degree black belt in France.
Yeah.
You were a third degree
Yeah,
black
yeah.
belt in France, and then you got to Japan. What happened?
Thing is, I didn't care much about getting my new degree when I was in France. I took it because in France, if you want to become instructor, you have to become second degree.
Mhm.
So that's what made me get it. But I've never cared much about it. But I wanted to get one in Japan. Like, wow,
Yeah.
that would be so nice to get my degrees in Japan. Sounds so, because I wasn't supposed to stay in Japan that long. Now it's been 8 years. So I was like, I'm in Japan for 1 year. So let's get a degree in Japan. So I went through the process to get it. So I did the kata, I did the fight. You need to win 4 fights. One fight gives you 1 point. You need to win 4. The rules are a bit different than France, actually. In France, you need 100 points, and Ippon is 10 points, and Wazar is 7 points. But
Mhm.
anyway, so I went through the process. I finished everything. I completed the papers. When my instructor sent the papers to the Kodokan, we got a letter back, and the letter said, "I'm a shodan in I'm a shodan in Japan. I have to go back to shodan to get my second dan first. But since I passed the test to get the fourth degree in Japan, they should give me at least a second dan without make me go through the test again. Because if I can pass the test for fourth degree, it means I have the level to get second degree. But they said, no,
Wow.
you have to go through the process
They
again.
do not. Yes. Yes. Yeah. There's no skipping over the process. Yes.
Yes. I got the point for, can I use the points that I got for the fourth degree to get the second one? And they said, no.
So if I understand you correctly, you passed the test to actually get your fourth stripe. Like you qualified. You passed their test. You passed their test to get the fourth dan. That's the test you
Yeah.
took, and then because of Japan's adherency to paperwork and bureaucracy, they said no. We have to start you at. We're gonna strip you. You went in for a promotional test.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And they stripped you of rank and put
But the-
you back at black.
But the crazy thing, that's the most crazy thing, is when I do tournament in Japan, they don't let me fight with the first degree belt. They make me fight with the fourth degree belt now
Mhm.
because they say since I'm a third degree in France, it's unfair if I fight with shodan in Japan. So I have to fight in third degree, but they don't want to give it to me.
Yeah. Exactly.
So okay, wait. So
my
if I understood you correctly, they recognize that your skill is at fourth
I'm
degree,
not gonna give him the rank.
and they're gonna say, hey, when you compete, it's unfair to others to let
Yes.
you go up against a black belt. However, when you're in class, you're a black belt, but when you compete, you're a fourth degree. And that's how we're gonna move forward. Oh Jesus.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Batsukan. Do they have Batsukan promotion?
Back?
Are you aware of that term? Batsukan?
Batsuga?
Yes.
Oh,
Are
I
you
don't
aware
know
of
this
that
term.
term? Okay, that's supposedly a promotion. Say you're a first degree black belt. Okay, you go up against a handful. I think it's got to be more than it's got to be 5 or more.
Yeah.
Say they all outrank you. If you beat them, you can get an automatic promotion, but it has to take place like at a certain tournament and stuff like that. There's some rules there, and it kind of sounds like, I mean, if you were holding your own, against other Sandons and above, but
So my next
rank
competition
in
too.
Japan is extremely difficult to get, especially, I mean, even for Japanese, it's hard to get. So, it's not going to make it easier for foreigners. If anything, they're going to make it harder.
I have and then here's the thing, and I have a huge wrench for both of you guys, because here's a huge wrench in everything you just mentioned. I was just talking to one of my students who is excuse me, and he's a black belt in judo. And he doesn't practice judo anymore. He got really upset with judo because he was saying that, well, pretty much in Japan, I can enter my judo club as a teenager, and in 2 years, I can test for my black belt. And in 2 years, I got my black belt in judo.
Yeah.
And and all you got, it's expensive. You got to pay $300, and you got to pass a written test and everything. But he was talking about the process is more about paperwork and money than actual skill. And it turned him off to judo. He left and started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu before he joined the military. And they joined the military and does BJJ to this day. Now he's doing MMA and BJJ with me now. And I'm telling them.
Now, basically, you're saying they're holding foreigners to a completely different.
They are. And he doesn't even know that part of the conversation. I'm just listening to I was just listening to like, because I was always scratching my head because I've talked to Americans for a while now.
We definitely got a couple of
judo, right? I
have
have another friend who does judo, and he's been doing judo for like 9 years, and his instructor's Russian, so he's teaching judo and sambo, and his instructor holds certificates in both, and he's been doing it for like 8-9 years, and the instructor is still holding him. I think I forgot how your ranks work, but it's whatever is before brown. What's before brown in judo? Green. So he's holding him at green for like 8 years now, and he's training every week, and he's just like, no, not good enough, and like, so it's this weird thing because I'm talking about. I'm listening to my American friends say this, and I'm like, dude, I know guys, and I know for a fact, I like when I first. And Vincent knows this because Vincent came in to do some MMA with me a long time ago at a place I coach at. And Vincent was like, hey, and we're going to get into this next part of the conversation because Barron teaches freestyle judo and no-gi. So like Vincent was saying the grips are totally different when it comes to no-gi. So a lot of the judo guys I've met were in an MMA context with no-gi. So I always felt, I mean, I've never studied judo, but I always felt like, man, there must be like a huge gap between gi and no-gi, because these guys, no offense, they kind of suck. I met a guy who was a heavyweight who couldn't do it.
Wait, so let's go back. So you're the guys in the gi suck when it comes to the no-gi?
Yeah, the guys with the gi. And at first I was like, okay, this makes sense. It's different. It's different enough for me to say that if you're a heavyweight black belt in judo and I'm a middleweight, so the guys I'm talking about, I have to speak American here. They're about 225 pounds. and I'm about 180, 175. And if we do no-gi, I'm taking these guys down like quick. They have no defense to a single leg or a double leg. They have zero. Their newaza sucks. They have no idea how to stop an Americana or be taking their back. So I was like, okay, maybe this is just like a not transferring really well. But then when I got into gi jiu-jitsu, the same thing happened. I'd have people with gis. Now they're black. They're okay. We both have gis now, so we should be even, right? Like you should be able to counter. I should have to be careful with you because you can grab me and throw me to the ground. But again, the same process started happening. They'd come in, I'd go for a single leg. They had zero answer for a single leg. They had zero answer for a double leg because they took out leg grabs.
Yeah.
And that was just a huge issue. I'd throw them to the ground and the same sequence. My favorite sequence, which I probably shouldn't share in public, is I don't compete anymore, so what the hell do I care? Is a single leg, pass, side control, to Americana, and that is my go-to for anyone that I feel I want to take out in 15 seconds. So like, yeah, so that's, and then he tells, and then there I find out 2 years, right? And a lot of the guys, maybe the guys I'm talking about, have only been doing judo for 2 years, and then they'll stop, they hold on to their rank, and then they meet me 5-6 years later, and they haven't been practicing. And that's what I started seeing here is, oh, okay. So now that we've opened up that part of the discussion, Barron, what happened to you in the Kodokan?
Oh, okay. So, through the organizations, okay, the Kodokan will recognize your rank once you attain Shodan, right? Because you're supposedly like U.S.A. Judo and U.S.A. supposedly the criteria is the same. Okay, so there's an American Kodokan board here, right? So you can submit your stuff. They submit it to the Kodokan in Japan, and then you typically get a yay or nay answer. Well, I elected to do this when I was a Sandan. And long story short, basically I got the thing back, said they wouldn't do it at Sandan, but they would do it at Shodan. And they, and then just like Vincent was saying, all my time now, let's go back. Now, mind you, by the time I had it took me 7 years to get my Shodan, right? I was Shodan for 12 years. Okay. So that's already almost 20 years. Okay. And then I was at Nidan for 8. So I'm sitting here 30 years of judo, basically, and they're going, well, we'll recognize you at Shodan, which at that point I says, no, I'm a Sandan, damn it. And that was it. That was in the conversation. There's no way in the world I'm starting 30 years all over again. No. Just okay. If I see you on the map, we'll see who's got what. That's it. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the only place your damn judo matters. Okay, so
That's true. Yeah.
there you go. Angelo, you're laughing, but that's what you wanted. Son.
That's what I wanted. Sorry. Yeah. There's a huge.
So you're looking at the one guy that gave the Kodokan the finger at the end of the day.
So right now
That's
we can say the biggest difference between right now in this podcast, the biggest between U.S. Judo, Japan Judo, and France Judo is American Judo will give you the finger if they don't like what you have to say.
I mean, I'm 60 years old. I don't need nobody.
Yeah. I should do that, maybe. I should try.
So, Barron, what's a question that you have for Vincent as far as judo in France or
well,
Japan?
it's interesting to see that here we are. We've kind of had a similar experience with the Kodokan, and and he's there. So he, I just. And he's there. He's kind of under that umbrella, so he has to play ball, And I get that because I'm under U.S.A. Judo. If I want to do anything really like, I've got a couple of my students that are interested in competing in judo seriously and maybe going to the Olympics one day. Well, the only pipeline available is through U.S.A. Judo, so I kind of have to play ball, to an extent. And so that's but that's the game. I mean, you got to play it. And, how many coaches, get students who I want to go to the Olympics in judo. I mean, I'm 60 years old. It's really never happened to me before, and now I'm thinking, where were you at, kid, 20 years ago, so, but hey, and but I'm going to give him every opportunity that I can. And it's just incumbent upon me as his judo instructor to go, hey, the world's open. We have all these opportunities and I can make sure that you get them, so that's just kind of, and,
so do you have a question for Vincent about France or Japan?
And yeah, I mean, as when you were going through your training in France, I'm sure you guys had your own like national governing body, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
I mean, so did they have some type of an agreement worked out with the Kodokan as well about, well, we can, you know, because all that stuff should be like, you know, readily available to them if they look into it. But
So is your
again, the
so
Kodokan kind of has their own rule set. So
so your question is, does France have a connection to the Kodokan as far as how they're
yeah,
gonna
like here ours is USA Judo. That's our national governing body for, you know, the IJF and the Kodokan and
Yeah.
everything.
how about in France, Vincent? How does that work as far as the
They,
Kodokan and judo there?
they work with the Kodokan, but not as much as I thought. Like, for example, I'm a judo instructor in France, but the license is not recognized in Kodokan.
Yes, yeah,
But actually, the fun thing is I'm allowed to teach judo in Japan to make my own dojo.
yeah.
But the rules are very flexible in Japan. You can create your own dojo, like and become your own teacher in your dojo, but
Mhm.
you cannot be officially a judo instructor. But without being a judo instructor, you can have your dojo and teach. That's what's the crazy part, which is not allowed in France. France is very, very strict about teaching judo. You need to be licensed and registered in your department, and you have to
So it's
go through a long
as
process.
government regulated.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, yes.
okay. See, we don't
So,
we don't have that here. We don't have
so
that.
when you go to a dojo in France, you can be sure that the coach is a real instructor and he's
Yeah,
registered. It's impossible to teach judo without being registered. And even the people who help him teaching, they have to
yes,
be registered
yeah.
and they have to go through the test every 2 years. Like it's very strict, very, very strict. But in Japan, they tell me, Japan told me you are a shodan, you cannot be a coach, but you are allowed to have your own dojo and teach.
Then
That's a bit
so in France, every 2 years you have to retest to keep your license
ah,
valid.
for the assistant. Um, the degree, the certificate that I got, for me, it's okay until the end of my life. But they changed the certificate 10 years ago, and the new one, you have to go through the process every 5 years.
5 years.
And for the people who want to help the teacher, like just to be assistant, they have to go through the process every 2 years.
Yeah.
It's a light process, but you still have to go like a few Sundays, like 5 Sundays a year to learn the change of the rules and to show that you're still able to teach and you they just want to check if you're still,
Mm-hmm.
How much does
yeah,
that how much does that cost?
it's very cheap actually. Yeah, I don't know the price now, but when I went through the test, I think it was like 600 euros. So maybe, I don't know in dollars, maybe 1,000. I don't know, but it's not that expensive. Actually, passing the test for black belt is free, and getting your new degrees is free too. So when I was in
Yeah.
Japan, I had to pay. I was surprised, like,
Still though,
what?
wait a second, wait a second. That's still like 600. You said 600 euros?
That's
Yeah,
like
for the
$600, right?
That's still $635.
yeah, but that's for you get your certificate for life when you
Oh,
go
for
when you
okay. So
for mine.
over years,
But
that was a
yeah,
lifetime. Okay. All right.
yeah.
I
But
thought that was like every 2 years you're giving them $600.
no, no,
I was
no,
like,
no.
hell no.
Like,
The American of me is about to start with this again.
Well, and then now here in America, I mean, there's no government certification process. Your
uh,
certifications come through the organization, you know, like USA Judo or USJA, and
yeah.
and but the drawback is that anybody can open up a damn judo school and not know a damn thing about judo. So I mean
Yeah,
that's that's the drawback because there's no
that's what I felt when I
yeah
was.
yeah
Okay.
yeah there's no vetting process as far as you know statewide or nationwide or anything like that. There's just
Like
it's not
the process
regulated.
in
Not regulated.
in France, it's a double process. Before doing the course for becoming a judo teacher, you have to become a sports instructor first. And
Yes.
that takes 1 year. And during this year, you learn about the law, you learn about the body, you have biology, you have many things.
Mm.
That's 1 year. And it's all people from different sports doing the same common test.
Yes. Yeah.
Once you get this one, then you take your specific course. So judo or soccer or football, basketball, anything. But first you need to become a sports instructor. And when you have this common sports instructor certificate, then you get your specific sports course.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you need to get both. So,
Yeah.
and that's very long. It takes 2 years, 1 year for the common one and 1 year for the specific one. So you can be sure that every judo instructor went through this
Knows
process.
judo. Yeah. Exactly.
I really like that. So like for my,
Yeah.
because like he's saying in America, you're kind of left to yourself. And since I'm not in judo, right, I'm not in judo, and my plans in life were never to be even what I'm doing now. I just kind of hit the ground running, if you will, as far as MMA coaching and my martial arts journey. So personally, I felt it was important to learn what you just said. And I in college studied sports kinesiology. So I went and took the same courses you took, not because a government body told me I had to, but because I felt it was important if I'm going to be coaching.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be coaching people, then I should probably know something about kinesiology, sports and fitness, and nutrition. I don't have to maybe be the best at it, but I should at least have some sort of knowledge on it. So when I was doing my degree in this degree called human development, where you study anatomy, psychology, sociology, chemistry. It's a several fields to understand how the human body works.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of specify on one section and kind of pick your courses. I figured, okay, since I'm doing martial arts, I should probably pick a lot of the sports kinesiology classes to cover the same
That's really
kind of
important.
information.
Yeah.
Because I thought it's really important.
Yeah.
But that's a personal decision. So what Vincent's saying, which I thought was pretty cool, is they're not saying they should. I mean, if you're going to be working in that field, then yeah, you should know. Like you should know at least some basics.
And kind of to add on to that, I mean, with me, it's like not only do I have coaching certifications from 3 or 4 different judo organizations, I've got a coaching certification from boxing, and then outside of that, the National Academy of Sports Medicine, I got a couple things from them. One of them is sports performance enhancement training, so a lot of the kinesiology stuff and everything I get through that, and so it's just stuff that it's not required over here for me to do, but I do it because as a good coach, you need a knowledge of that. I mean, you really have to, so.
We even had to take a rescue class in case we have a fire or if when someone get injured. And we had a 3 months law. We need to study the law, like what happened if a kid touch another one in the locker room, what to do. And it was very deeper than I thought when I took those classes.
Every couple of years here, we have to go through what's called safe sport, and then concussion training, and they're 2 different. Every couple of years, we have to go through that. I mean, it's not a big deal really, but there again, every little bit of information helps. So.
But you said you go through that voluntarily, or you have to go through it to be registered.
The safe sport and the concussion training, U.S.A. Judo requires me to go through it every couple of years to keep all my stuff, all my certifications up to date. That's required, and I think, and if I'm not mistaken, probably I would say the other 2, USJF and USJ, probably require the same thing.
All right, so we're getting close to our wrap. Sorry, go ahead, Vincent.
Because when I was young, I was like, I want to teach judo. All you think about is just I'm gonna show some moves. But when you go through the course for the certification, they say, what do you do if a 4 years old student, a girl, pee on herself? you have to study. Are you allowed to change her? Are you allowed to like
Yeah.
bring her? That's something you don't think about it when you say, I'm going to teach judo. But you have to study those things too. Are you allowed by
Mhm.
the law to change a 4 years old student who just pee on himself? Do you have to call his parents? Do you have to bring him to the locker room? Can you change him? Can you? That's something you have to learn the law to not to avoid getting in trouble. It's
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah, a
that's
liability
so
type thing.
many.
Yeah, exactly.
Like for a quick example, what Angelo is doing wouldn't be possible in France. Like Angelo is showing some judo moves, some jiu-jitsu moves, some MMA move. In France, if you are a judo instructor, and I say, I'm going to show you a quick MMA move. If you say the word MMA, you can get in troubles just because you're not an MMA instructor. And I know a friend who had a judo dojo, and just for fun during summer vacation, he wanted to make some boxing classes just for fun. And he got in troubles for that. And the French Federation sent him a letter saying, you are not a boxing certificate instructor. You are not allowed to even show some boxing
Okay.
moves. That's illegal. And he got
So,
in trouble
and
for
he
that.
probably doesn't know the answer, but I have to ask, well, what about Kaji Kimbo?
Okay, so I have a great little plug, shameless plug right here. Kaji France. I put the video right here. They talk
Okay.
about that. I interviewed two guys who have been teaching Kaji in France for years now, and what you just mentioned, Vincent, was their biggest hurdle. Like I don't want to give away too much on the show, but one of the biggest hurdles, because Kaji why do I do what I do, is because my certificate allows me to do this, but it's not regulated by any government body. So
Yeah,
so they had the same issue. They had a certificate that's not regulated by. So when the government came in to tell them the same thing, they said, "Hey, what do you mean you're teaching karate? What do you mean you're teaching judo? What do you mean you're teaching boxing and
Mm-hmm.
kickboxing
yeah,
and MMA? All the questions you just asked." And they actually had to petition to the U.S. government, to the U.S. government, to the
oh,
French government. And recently, now that the law changed in France, and they finally, there's
I know
another
the
layer.
MMA.
MMA was outlawed. That's a whole other podcast I need to do with Vincent
I
and my
need
other
a
French guys. But MMA was not legal. You can
couldn't
practice. You
mention it.
couldn't
Okay.
practice it. You couldn't compete in it. And then
Yeah,
recently, first they lifted the okay, you can practice it, but you can't compete in it. And I think recently, now that
yeah,
the last French UFC champion came
UFC
out,
event.
they said, okay, we're going to allow people to compete. But that's all new. But that first layer, when they decided to open up that you can now practice MMA, helped my Kaju friends in France, because then they came in and said, okay, we're doing that. That's what we're doing. It's Kaju is MMA, and that's how they got their licenses to do everything else through the French government. Before that, they could practice, but they couldn't compete in anything. So they could
Yeah, that was very
practice it,
complicated.
but you can't compete. So because it's Kaju but they couldn't compete in karate, they couldn't compete in there was no kickboxing events, they couldn't do anything. So for years they just practiced it, and then finally, it came up. But check out that
Wow.
podcast; they talk about that.
So,
But
but
before I go, you're touching on my last question, and I gotta go because I have my next podcast guest coming in soon. Um,
uh,
so we have kept this conversation judo this whole time, and for most of the people that follow my show, it's kind of going out of judo. For you, because if you put up with this long enough, the last question I'm going to ask both of you is, what about MMA? Have you seen? And I'll start with Vincent with this because I already know I already have a good idea what Barron's going to say because I had a whole podcast with him about this. But what about what's going on with MMA and judo in your experience, Vincent? What is it? Some in here in Japan, maybe a little bit in France, but I know you came in a little bit. We did a little bit of MMA together for a little while there. But what is going on with that in your experience? How has MMA impacted your judo, or has it impacted at all? I don't know.
for me, first, when the rules change in judo, like when they stop the leg grab, I did sambo for 1 year, and I won the national championship in 2011 in
Okay.
sambo. But I felt more freedom than in judo, where I can grab leg, I can do. I felt it was closer to MMA because I wanted to do MMA, but it was not allowed, as you said. So sambo was the closest thing for me to MMA. But the thing is, I love judo too much. So I felt better doing sambos and judo, but I love judo, so I came back to judo. And when I arrived to Japan, since my, as you said, judokas, we are a little bit weak on the ground. So I started in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to improve in that area. And I was surprised to see that Japanese judoka are very open to MMA, trying Jiu-Jitsu and stuff like this. In France, it's very close. If you do judo, it's only judo. You don't go to MMA, you don't go to. But Japanese, you see many Japanese judoka from the national team going to MMA, going to Jiu-Jitsu just for training. A few days ago, we saw Hashimoto, who's one of the best in the world,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he went to a boxing class. So I'm surprised that Japanese Federation even allow him to do boxing just for fun to practice. In Japan, in France, like the federation would go crazy if they see one of the national team member going to a boxing class, even just for practice. They would, yeah, he would get banned for sure. So I'm like, since Japan is more open about it, I was like, I'm gonna try it too. I'm gonna try to do MMA. I'm gonna try to do a little bit of boxing. And what helped me a lot is you learn how to manage distance a little bit better. So since I've done jiu-jitsu, I did a little bit of Thai boxing too for a few months. I've, my distance management got a little bit better because in France we are very close when we do judo. Japanese are further, and when you take boxing class, you learn how to be further from your opponent, which was very difficult for me at the beginning. I remember we talked about it the first time we met. I feel so weak when my opponent is far from me. Like I want to get close. I want to hug him.
Yeah.
But that, yeah, it helped me a lot to in the transition too. When you do MMA, you have no time from standing. When you are, as soon as you go on the ground, you have to move very fast. In judo, we take more time because we have some defense position. You can just wait until the referee stops the fight. But in MMA, you have to move very fast. The transitions are very quick. And that helped me a lot in my judo. One of my favorite movies is Sumigaishi, and that's the one I do the most in to Japanese people. And since I've done a little bit of MMA, from my Sumigaishi to the ground, the transition become really quicker, very, mm, yeah, more fluent than before. Before I was used to take more time in the transition. So MMA helps a lot in the transition for judoka. So I think every judoka should try MMA just to learn those transitions faster.
Barron, same question, and I have my next guest coming in 4 minutes, Barron. So I don't want to say make it quick, but yeah, make it quick, man.
Got it. No problem. Well, I mean, typically when you see two judoka, if you watch like high level judo and you see them grip fighting, they literally almost look like boxers. So so when you look at the biomechanics of reaching out and getting somebody's grip, it's the same exact ones of throwing a punch, except you might turn the hand over a little bit. Okay, so to me, it's not that big of a transition. Okay. If you watch me take a stance in judo and take a stance in Kajukenbo, you will not see a difference.
Oh,
Okay? I'm really not in a bent over posture. I'm upright, and I look like a boxer. I look like my knees are bent. I've got full mobility, and so look at Kayla Harris. Look at her. She's starting out, in the UFC, but she can punch. Ronda Rousey couldn't punch worth a damn. Okay, but I think because her judo, it being a little bit more explosive, and she understands, I think, the concept of the grip fighting. Look at it, it just makes an easier transition. Okay. And so a lot of times, let's go back to gi and no gi. People get really fixated on the gi, and they make the problem of, well, now I'm dealing with a no gi guy, so I got to grip him a certain way. For me, that's just a minor adjustment. That's the way my mind works. I don't make it any more difficult and I think that's the problem. There's like a big mental block there that makes it a little more difficult. the closer I get, the better I feel. So I kind of share, I don't like being long range. So I like to be at that middle range where I can grip or punch, and then I'm closed in the distance because I want to hit you with a throw. If I'm doing no-gi, my hips and my opponent's hips are now in closer proximity. I'm not holding them out. I've got an underhook and an overhook in. So, hitting a turn throw is going to happen in the blink of an eye as opposed to taking a little bit longer because I've closed that gap. There's no distance there anymore, to worry about. So I don't think it's that difficult a transition, but a lot of people have problems with it. But I kind of think it's a mental thing and not so much a physical thing. So there you go.
All right. So we will do another podcast about judo and MMA, and I will have Vincent and Barron come in for that to bring in their ideas about that. But for now, we're down for our wrap up. I want to say thank you to Vincent and thank you to Barron for coming out and sharing their thoughts, their experiences with judo in their respective countries. One of these episodes once a week. Catch y'all next time.